Most people assume the United States, the world's biggest economy, is automatically richer than any small country. But let me tell you something. On a per-person basis, Norway, a nation smaller than Texas, outranks the US in wealth. How is it possible that a country with just 5 million people can outperform a superpower of 330 million? In this video, we'll uncover the surprising mix of natural resources, social systems, and policies that make Norway one of the richest nations per capita. By the end, you'll see why size isn't everything and why the US might be doing some things very differently than you thought. One of the simplest but most overlooked reasons Norway is richer per person than the United States comes down to basic math: population. Norway is home to just over 5 million people, roughly the size of a medium US city, whereas the United States has a population exceeding 330 million. On a headline level, the US produces far more total wealth. Its GDP is massive, but when that wealth is divided among hundreds of millions, the per-person share naturally shrinks. Norway, by contrast, divides its wealth among a far smaller population, which instantly boosts its per capita numbers. But it's not just arithmetic. Population size also affects how efficiently a country can scale its resources and policies. In a small country like Norway, economic initiatives, infrastructure investments, and social programs can reach nearly everyone with minimal friction. Roads, healthcare, schools, and public services are easier to maintain and standardize across a small population. Compare that to the US, where the same policies must navigate vast geographic distances, state-by-state regulations, and a population spread across multiple time zones. What works in one state may not work in another, which can dilute the effectiveness of national wealth-building strategies. This scalability also extends to wealth creation itself. For instance, when Norway invests in industries like oil, gas, or renewable energy, the revenue generated per person is significantly higher simply because fewer people share the profits. In the US, a similar boom in a sector still has to support a population dozens of times larger, which spreads the gains thinner. Even when the overall economy grows, the impact on individual wealth may feel less dramatic because the population is so vast. Smaller populations also make long-term planning easier. Norway can design policies knowing that demographic trends are more predictable, migration flows are manageable, and social systems won't be overwhelmed. The US faces a much more complex challenge. Policies have to account for millions of new citizens every year, varying state priorities and diverse socio-economic needs. This complexity can slow the translation of national wealth into individual prosperity, even in a country with a massive total GDP. Finally, a smaller population fosters a sense of cohesion and shared responsibility that can amplify economic outcomes. Public projects, taxation, and national wealth management are easier to coordinate when the stakeholders are fewer and more engaged. In Norway, citizens see the direct benefits of collective economic strategies, which reinforces trust into government, encourages compliance with policies, and ultimately helps maintain high per capita wealth. So while the US may dominate in total economic output, Norway's smaller population is a hidden multiplier. Fewer people mean each citizen can claim a bigger slice of the national pie. Policies can be implemented more efficiently, and wealth can be distributed in a way that maximizes individual prosperity. It's a simple concept, but one that underpins much of Norway's per-person success, and one that the US, for all its size and resources, can't replicate so easily. Norway's wealth story isn't just about population size, it's also about what the country does with what it has. Beneath its fjords and mountains lies a treasure trove: oil and gas reserves discovered in the North Sea during the late 1960s. For a small nation, this was nothing short of a windfall. But here's the crucial detail: discovering resources is one thing, managing them wisely is another. Norway didn't just pump oil and spend the profits on short-term gains. Instead, it took a long-term strategic approach that would secure wealth for generations. At the heart of this strategy is Norway's sovereign wealth fund, officially called the Government Pension Fund Global. This fund takes surplus revenues from oil and gas production and invests them globally in stocks, bonds, and real estate. Unlike many countries that might treat natural resource money as a free-for-all for immediate spending, Norway treats it as a national endowment. Today, this fund is the largest in the world, valued at over $1.9 trillion, roughly 3 times Norway's annual GDP. The fund earns returns that grow year after year, providing the country with a steady source of income that doesn't rely solely on fluctuating oil prices. The genius of this approach is twofold. First, it smooths out the boom and bust cycles that typically plague resource-dependent economies. Many countries struck by sudden resource wealth experience Dutch disease, where reliance on oil or minerals distorts the economy, causing inflation, currency swings, and neglect of other industries. Norway avoided this by investing abroad rather than spending all revenue domestically. Second, it ensures that every Norwegian, present and future, benefits from the nation's natural resources. When the fund earns returns, it funds public services, infrastructure, and pensions, directly boosting individual prosperity. Contrast this with the United States, which is also rich in natural resources, oil, gas, coal, timber, and agricultural land, but uses them very differently. US resources wealth is largely decentralized, controlled by private companies, and taxed at comparatively lower rates. While this fuels corporate profits and innovation, it doesn't guarantee that the average American sees a direct benefit proportional to national wealth. Economic gains from resources can be uneven, concentrated among corporations and high-income individuals, rather than systematically enhancing per capita wealth. Norway's model shows the power of coupling resources with disciplined management. A small population combined with massive resource revenue and prudent investment multiplies per person wealth far beyond what raw GDP numbers alone would suggest. The country's approach is not just about having resources, it's about using them intelligently. By planning decades ahead, Norway has created a system where national prosperity grows steadily, citizens enjoy a high standard of living, and the country is insulated from many of the economic shocks that larger nations like the US experience. In short, Norway didn't just stumble into wealth, it designed it. Oil gave them the tools, but the sovereign wealth fund ensured those tools would continue to work, turning temporary resource luck into enduring per capita prosperity. Meanwhile, the US, despite enormous resources, sees wealth spread thinly across a much larger population, often concentrated rather than universally shared. This difference in strategy is one of the clearest reasons why Norwegians enjoy more wealth per person than Americans. Another critical reason Norway outpaces the United States in per capita wealth is not just what the country produces, but how it invests in its people. Norway has some of the highest taxes in the world. Corporate, personal, and consumption taxes are all significantly higher than in the US. At first glance, this might seem like a disadvantage, discouraging work or entrepreneurship. But in reality, these taxes fund an extensive network of social services that directly amplify individual and collective prosperity. Healthcare in Norway, for example, is universal. Every citizen has access to high-quality medical care without the fear of catastrophic bills. This system ensures that illness doesn't become a financial crisis, allowing Norwegians to take risks in entrepreneurship, education, or career changes with a safety net in place. Similarly, education is heavily subsidized, from primary school all the way through university. Young people can pursue higher education without drowning in debt, creating a highly skilled workforce that fuels innovation, productivity, and long-term economic growth. Beyond healthcare and education, Norway's social welfare programs provide stability in times of unemployment, parental leave, or disability. These programs reduce economic inequality and create a sense of security that encourages citizens to invest in themselves and their communities. When people aren't forced to focus solely on surviving, they can focus on creating, innovating, and contributing meaningfully to the economy. The result is a population whose potential is maximized and that translates directly into per capita wealth. Contrast this with the United States, where taxes are comparatively lower, but individuals bear far more financial risk. Healthcare costs can be astronomical, higher education often leaves students with decades of debt, and social safety nets are patchy at best. While lower taxes leave more disposable income for some, they also shift the burden of risk onto individuals. This trade-off can suppress economic mobility, reduce long-term productivity, and widen inequality. Essentially, in the US, wealth exists, but it is unevenly distributed and more dependent on personal circumstances rather than being systemically supported by the state. Norway's approach demonstrates a different philosophy. By pooling resources through taxation and redistributing them efficiently, the nation invests in its greatest asset, its people. High taxes aren't a penalty. They're a tool for multiplying human capital. Healthier, better educated citizens are more productive, innovative, and capable of contributing to sustained economic growth. When each individual thrives, the per person slice of national wealth grows alongside the economy itself. This system also reinforces long-term stability. Since citizens trust that public programs will support them in times of need, the population is more willing to participate in the economy, take calculated risks, and accept collective responsibility. It's a cycle that continuously feeds per capita prosperity. In contrast, a society where individuals are left largely to fend for themselves may generate massive total wealth, but it won't necessarily translate into wealth for each person. So, Norway's taxation and social systems turn wealth into an engine for human capital. By investing in healthcare, education, and welfare, the country creates a virtuous cycle where each citizen's potential is fully realized. Meanwhile, the US model, with its lower taxes and higher individual risk, spreads wealth unevenly and often leaves opportunity untapped. In this way, Norway multiplies not just money, but the very capacity of its people to generate and enjoy wealth. Wealth is not just about what a country produces or how it taxes its citizens. It's also about trust. Norway's governance system, marked by low corruption, transparent policies, and predictable regulations, plays a central role in why the country is richer per person than the United States. Investors, businesses, and even ordinary citizens know that rules are consistent, contracts are enforced, and public funds are managed responsibly. This kind of stability is a silent but powerful driver of per capita prosperity. Norway consistently ranks among the least corrupt nations in the world. Low corruption means resources, whether they are oil revenues, taxes, or public investments, actually reach their intended purpose. Schools get funded, infrastructure gets built, and the sovereign wealth fund grows as intended. Citizens feel confident that their contributions to society are meaningful and effective, which fosters compliance, civic engagement, and cooperation. Businesses also benefit because they can plan long-term strategies without fearing sudden legal changes, bureaucratic roadblocks, or favoritism. This certainty encourages both domestic and foreign investment, increasing national wealth that gets shared among a small population. Policy stability is another key factor. Norway doesn't swing wildly between economic ideologies with each election. Long-term planning in areas like energy, education, healthcare, and social welfare ensures that programs continue uninterrupted. Investments are protected, and citizens can make decisions with confidence. This kind of environment allows people to think in decades, not just election cycles. For instance, companies in Norway can commit to multi-year projects. Innovators can fund research with long-term horizons, and the population can invest in education knowing the system will support them. All of these factors increase productivity and ultimately wealth per person. Contrast this with the United States, where governance is more complex and less predictable at a federal level. The US operates under a federal system with 50 states, each with its own rules, taxes, and regulations. Policies can vary dramatically depending on where you live, creating inconsistencies that complicate long-term planning for businesses and citizens alike. Moreover, major economic policies, taxes, healthcare, social programs can change significantly depending on the administration in power. These policy swings introduce uncertainty, making businesses and individuals more cautious, which can suppress investment, innovation, and productivity. While the US economy is massive, these governance dynamics can dilute per person benefits. Norway's approach illustrates that economic success isn't just about natural resources or low unemployment. It's also about creating an environment where trust and predictability multiply individual prosperity. When citizens and investors believe in the system, they participate more fully, plan more confidently, and take calculated risks that generate wealth. The result is not only higher productivity but also a more equitable distribution of wealth, since everyone benefits from stable policies and transparent governance. So, Norway's governance model turns trust into capital. Its low corruption, long-term policy planning, and reliable institutions can create a stable environment where every citizen can contribute to and benefit from the economy. The US, despite its size and resources, struggles with systemic unpredictability and fragmented policy implementation. This difference in governance is one of the quiet but profound reasons why Norway consistently outperforms the US on a per capita basis. Beyond policies, taxes, and natural resources, Norway's culture and society values play a surprisingly powerful role in generating per person wealth. Wealth is not just numbers on a balance sheet, it's the result of how a society organizes itself, what it prioritizes, and how individuals engage with the economy. In Norway, cultural norms around work-life balance, education, and social cohesion directly influence productivity, innovation, and equitable wealth distribution. Work-life balance is deeply embedded in Norwegian society. Unlike in countries where long hours are celebrated as a sign of commitment, Norwegians prioritize efficiency and quality of life. Shorter work weeks, generous parental leave, and strong labor protections create an environment where people are more focused and productive during working hours. Studies consistently show that countries with better work-life balance experience higher overall productivity per hour worked. For Norway, this means that even with fewer hours on the job compared to Americans, each person contributes more to the economy per unit of time. It's a subtle but important multiplier for per capita wealth. Education is another pillar. Norway invests heavily in its human capital, from free early childhood programs to accessible university education. High-quality schooling produces a skilled workforce capable of innovation, entrepreneurship, and adapting to new industries. Unlike societies where education is a privilege, in Norway it's a right, creating broad-based economic participation. Citizens are empowered to reach their full potential, which increases individual productivity and collectively raises per capita wealth. Social cohesion is equally important. Norwegians generally exhibit high levels of trust, both in government and in each other. This trust facilitates smoother economic interactions, reduces transaction costs, and encourages cooperation in both business and community life. People are more willing to pay taxes, follow regulations, and participate in collective programs like the Sovereign Wealth Fund. This cohesion ensures that wealth generated by the country circulates efficiently, benefiting the population broadly rather than being captured by a small elite. These cultural and societal factors are reflected in Norway's high human development indices. The country consistently ranks at the top in metrics like life expectancy, education, income inequality, and innovation per capita. High innovation rates, despite a small population, indicate that Norwegians are not just productive, they're creating new wealth, technologies, and business opportunities that further enhance per person prosperity. In other words, a society that prioritizes health, education, and equality creates conditions where each citizen can maximize their economic potential. Contrast this with larger, more fragmented societies like the United States. While the US also produces tremendous wealth, societal priorities are often more individualistic with less universal access to health and education. Social mobility is uneven and trust in institutions varies widely. The result is that despite immense total resources, the wealth generated does not translate as effectively into per-person prosperity. Ultimately, Norway's culture and social framework show that wealth is as much a product of human behavior and shared values as it is of policies and resources. By fostering balance, education, and cohesion, Norway creates an environment where each person can thrive economically. Societal priorities, what a country values and invests in, directly shape how wealth is created, distributed, and sustained, making per capita prosperity not just a statistic but a lived reality for every citizen. So why is Norway richer than the US on a per person basis? It's not just luck or natural resources. It's a combination of smart population management, disciplined use of wealth, social systems that empower citizens, stable governance, and a culture that maximizes human potential. Norway proves that wealth isn't just about how big your economy is. It's about how effectively that wealth reaches the people who live there. Smaller population, strategic investments, strong social programs, predictable policies, and a society that values balance and innovation all multiply individual prosperity. The US may have enormous resources and global influence, but size, complexity, and uneven systems make it much harder to translate total wealth into wealth per person. Norway shows that a nation doesn't need to be the biggest to be the richest. Sometimes the smartest approach matters far more than sheer scale. Next time you think about global wealth, don't just look at GDP. It's the per person impact, the policies, and the culture that truly determine how prosperous a nation feels for its citizens. Norway's example is a lesson in foresight, discipline, and the power of investing not just in resources, but in people.